Whoops, cut out of the ending real quickly. Anyway, hey everybody, it's Fight Club Hubs. Welcome to another episode of GVN Live. I am always your host, and with me tonight, as always, is Jamelian,
Hi.
Gamer Keith,
Yo,
and Mark B. Writing. And how is everybody today? You can all answer at once. I don't care.
Doing good.
tired.
Sounds like a
Tired,
typical
yes.
night. Yep.
I would just say that this thing called life is just getting the better of us all at the moment. But this is the one time of the week that I get to have my little zen and just get to talk about video games with people I like talking about video games with, honestly.
Yay! And with talking about video games, let's start off with our usual segment of what have we been playing. And, of course, I will go ladies first tonight. Emily, what have you been doing? What have you been playing?
Yeah, I feel like it's been forever since I've been on here, but
Yeah, you've been gone for the last few shows.
a lot of work. A lot of work. That's a lot of what I've been doing. Work. Between my job, I've had a ton of deadlines at my job in which I was pulling a lot of late nights and a lot of early mornings and a lot of no sleep in the month of September. And then at the end of the month, I had to pretty much work TFC, the Fall Classic, so I had to go down to North Carolina for that. But outside of that, besides work, I recently actually just got 2 new games. Yesterday I got The Evil Within 2, so I started playing that last night. And I also got Stardew Valley for the Switch, so
I love how she says it embarrassingly, like, "Oh, I got Stardew Valley."
It's probably like the
looks
5th
like
time she bought the game, I bet. She probably has it on the PC and on the
Actually,
PS3.
no, this is the first time I got it. So, like, somebody told me that it was like Harvest Moon, but better. And I
think
tried.
it was actually Mark that told you that.
Actually, no, it was Was it Mark?
I
pretty
said
sure
that
it
it's like
was.
Harvest Moon. I don't know if I said it was better or not. But
Somebody told me that.
Because
So,
I remember
maybe-
us actually having that conversation on this show, is why I was all like, "Wait a second, I'm pretty
Was
sure."
it on the show or was it in the Discord or both? I'm not sure.
I have no idea, but anyway.
Regardless, I started playing yesterday. I actually played it for like 2.5 hours straight. So I like it better so far than Harvest Moon, but we'll see. As for The Evil Within 2, definitely really like that game. But I'll only play it at night. Because,
with the lights off.
yes, exactly. Well, that's how I played the first one. But no,
With the
I
sound
played,
turned up.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's how I play all survival horror games. Like when I did, even with the VR for Resident Evil 7, even with the VR, I had all the lights off, which made it twice as more terrifying. Because once I actually took it off, like, and I went,
it's so dark.
I went back into like the real world. It was like pitch dark, and I'm like, probably should have rethought that idea before I put this on, because it's not like you see any light. You can't, like, that VR is like it's on your head tight. But yeah, other than that, some little games here and there. I've been doing my shows. How I've managed to even do the shows last month was beyond me. I wasn't as energetic as I normally am on them last month, and I was only able to do one. So I mean, work really just bodied me. September was a rough month, but October is here, so I've been playing Marvel and
Of course.
Street Fighter and a little bit of, well, sort of Street Fighter and Tekken, and yeah, all the typical, games. I tried to get the Dragon Ball Fighter Z beta, but I got a lovely rejection letter email telling me I was not selected.
Well, at least they were nice about it.
Oh, and I'm super excited because Super Mario Odyssey comes out in like a week.
Oh yeah.
2 weeks.
It's the 27th, and tomorrow is the 17th. That's like a week and a couple days.
That's almost 2 weeks.
No, that's like 10 days. That's literally like a week and 3 days.
Semantics.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, get technical. Is my webcam okay? Because my
Yeah.
computer's having problems, so it keeps freezing on me. Okay.
It's 11 days. 12 if you count today.
Oh my God! It is not 12 if you count today. It comes out on the 27th.
Mhm.
Tomorrow was the 17th. Last time I checked, 7 to 7, 7 to 17. That's like 10 days, is it not? I mean, I suck at math, but I don't think I'm that horrible.
2 plus 2 equals pi.
4.
22.
17, 18, 19. What's that?
I said 22. You said 2 plus 2 equals, and I said 22.
17 to 18, 18 to 19, 19 to 20, 20 to 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. That's 10 days.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21,
See,
22,
the
23,
problem,
24, 25,
but
26,
you're not
27.
doing it right. All right, you know what? You're not doing it right.
I'm counting
You're gonna-
whole days.
If you start on the 17th and go to the 18th, that's 1 day. 17th to the 18th, 1
Super
day.
Mario Odyssey, bringing families together.
Did we really make all of these poor people tune in so that you guys can figure out that you went to public school?
Hey, you went to Jersey Public School. I don't want to hear it.
I know how to
Guys.
math, motherfucker.
Yeah.
How many days is it, Mark, then? We'll just end the argument now.
What is the time period from the 17th to the 27th?
Yes.
10 days.
Are we counting the 17th as a day?
Yes.
Yes, the 17th to
Then it's
the 18th.
11 days. If we're counting
No.
the 17th
Well,
and
no,
the
because-
27th, it's 11 days.
If you want, but that wouldn't work. You're
I'm just
gonna go from
text message.
If
all
you're counting the
Discord
full days,
saying
it's 11
7
days. If you're not counting the day of arrival or the day of starting, it's 10 days.
that doesn't even make sense, but okay. Well, oh wait, no. See, I'm not counting the full day at the 27th because it
Then
literally
it's 10
comes
days.
out at midnight.
Then it's 10 days.
Thank you.
Then it is 10 days.
We're having a midnight release, so I am getting the game at midnight on the 27th. Therefore, it's 10 days. Thank you. I win. Okay, we can continue with the show.
So then,
Snap.
did I just lose based on a really, really bad technicality?
It's a real technicality. Do you know how many people are doing the midnight release?
Do I care?
Yes.
No.
you
Anyway,
do.
Anything else
Because
that you
you're
have
gonna
played,
be outside
Emily?
in front of the GameStop, you know it, and you're gonna be all like, "Oh, I can't wait." Don't lie to us, Hubs.
No.
You're gonna be
I
wearing your
hate so much the
Tanuki
things
suit.
that you choose to be.
He's gonna be so stubborn that he's gonna purposely wait until it's like right before GameStop closes on the 27th to actually pick it up, and then be like, "Look, it's been 11 days."
That actually might be closer to the truth, mainly because I had to pick my kids up on the way home because my wife has to work a football game. But anyway,
Yeah, sorry guys. All right, let's.
so okay, we're gonna move on to Keith now. Keith, what have you been playing?
I've been playing some of this game that you see right in the top corner here, Cuphead.
Cuphead.
Don't deal with the devil. And I've been still playing a Mario Rabbids, which is a lot of fun still. It just like all the different scenarios that they have, and just like the really funny messages they have with the rabbits, hilarious. And this game, everybody keeps on saying it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's goddamn hard, but it's not that hard. We all have to like relax on that, honestly. But regardless, these are the two games I've been playing. After that, again, this whole thing called life, unfortunately, is going on. So that's been like kind of hurting the games at the moment.
And that okay. And Mark, how about you? What have you been playing?
I've mostly just been playing Danganronpa V3 in the attempt of trying to make a guide up for it at the request of Mr. Sean Madsen. That's really honestly about it, actually. I bought Golf Story, and I watched somebody else play The Evil Within 2, but for me it's basically just been Danganronpa V3 and like not a whole lot else at this point.
How does it
I've
stack
just been kind of tired and busy and stuff.
Is Golf Story any good?
From what I'm told, it's very good. I have honestly not had an opportunity to play it, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh,
But from what I am told, it's very good.
Now, I don't know if you've mentioned it on the previous couple of shows or whatever, but what is your initial impression of Danganronpa and compared it to the last two?
I think I've mentioned this briefly in the live streams when I've been doing it, but essentially, my opinion of Danganronpa V3 is if you look at the original game that came out, the original game in musical terms feels like, a really great freshman album from an underground artist that you've only casually heard anything about. Sort of like, like Prince's For You, if we wanted to do something with an artist that people can identify with. Danganronpa 2 would be probably something along the lines of like almost a Purple Rain in that category, where it refines the things that people didn't like about the first game and fixes like what was bad, and then goes and in turn makes everything work out the way that like people are expecting that it would work out. Going with this particular metaphor, Danganronpa V3 would be something like Come, where you just released it to get out of your fucking record contract or to meet a basic obligation and to move on with your goddamn life because you don't want to do it anymore.
Okay, then.
I don't think it's bad. It's utterly... I don't feel like the writer wants to do it anymore. It's like a Metal Gear Solid thing where he's like, I don't want to make these kinds of games anymore, and it's just going by the numbers, going through the motions, and trying to do what he's doing to get it over and done with. Also, there's like fantasy sequences where like if you buy this key from the casino, like you get the lead up, like basically like fan fiction lead up type stuff where like the characters are actively like flirting out fantasies with one another, and it's really weird, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it, but it's mostly not good.
Okay.
I don't hate it, but it's not a thing. It's not a thing I can recommend as well as I could the first two games.
Well, there you go. I might consider looking into it at some point when I beat the first two. But anyway, moving on, we are going to be talking about a couple of really interesting topics today. The first of which was an idea that popped into my head yesterday after a certain series of events. We are going to be talking about IGN and figuring out what kind of a company they're trying to be. This is mainly in part because yesterday, if you were paying attention, they purchased Humble Bundle. And the other topic we're going to talk about afterwards is an idea that was suggested in our Discord that we use privately to shoot ideas. Was the idea about hard games. Are games today too hard? Are they just fine? Is people just blowing things out of proportion? We're gonna talk about that for a little bit. So first off, let's talk about IGN. I don't know. Do we really want to go through with a brief history of IGN, or should we just get right into the nitty gritty? What do you guys think?
I mean, a brief history is... I think that's okay. It's just a brief history. We don't have to have a long conversation.
All right. So as most people know, mid-90s, a bunch of video game publication companies combined and created IGN, which actually, for some reason, I thought it stood for Internet Gaming News, but it actually stands for Imagine Games Network. And they were one of the first major video game online media outlets, covering practically every console generation out at the time, and also talking about movies. I think for a brief time they did try to do music. They do anime, television. They pretty much tried to cover everything they could, and they still try to do that to this day. Throughout the years, though, they have been bought and sold by various companies. Currently, they are now owned by Ziff Davis's company, or the parent company known as J2 Global, or that's a subsidiary of Ziff Davis. We haven't really figured that part out yet. But as a whole, the main thing we want to talk about is what IGN as a company has done. They have actually gone out and they have bought a bunch of different companies throughout the years. one of their first major acquisitions was back in 2004 when they purchased Direct to Drive, which was one of the first digital download services available when this was really just a
infancy phases, if you will, before even Steam.
Before Steam was a fart in Gabe Newell's brain.
All hail Gabe Newell.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really back. I mean, this is really back when like internet was really
trying to take off.
I mean, I don't even think internet really didn't like take off wasn't really offered very much to the public until like AOL.
You can. I was about to say, do you realize how many AOL discs there are? That are probably
I was saying until AOL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, like AOL was
sentence.
Yeah, like AOL was like the '90s area. Like, like you were starting to see like modems of various types popping up and stuff in like the late '80s, the early '90s, and early mid '90s when you started seeing the idea of AOL and Prodigy being ISPs, but they would just go to their own client. And then we started getting into, there are external websites out in the world and you can use Internet Explorer or whatever to get out to them. Like Direct to Drive was a thing where like gaming websites existed at that point and were doing things. Direct to Drive was the first real experiment with digitally delivering games, because if you wanted PC games up to that point, it was mostly either you downloaded through the company's website, which usually sucked, or you bought them through
GameStop,
EB Games or GameStop or Amazon or whatever, and you either dealt with the shipping times associated, or you hoped to God that they would have a physical copy in a location for like a Best Buy or whatever.
If you're referring back to the time, like even before or even around the time that AOL was AOL and was first offered to the public to have public internet, you could argue that there really wasn't Amazon. There really wasn't any of that. I mean, if you wanted
but like Direct to Drive is like in 2004.
Yeah,
Amazon's been around since like the late 90s.
Yeah. Now, other acquisitions that have followed since then, IGN actually bought from Rupert Murdoch News Corporation for somewhere around $650 million. They then acquired UPO. Or UGO Entertainment, which is a company that owned OneUp.com at the time, which I do believe was, before that, I'm sorry, was one of the big things that happened was the fact that they bought GameSpy and all of its subsidiaries. That was probably one of the big things. Like, that's two huge media outlets right there that have, which you would say was a merger, but it was really more of a complete, like, takeover. GameSpy at the time, of course, was more well known as a gaming service provider in regards to like playing online PC games through its client. And I do believe they were also dabbling into the digital download services like in the late mid 90s as well, or the late mid 2000s as well. Afterwards, they then bought UGO, which owned OneUp.com, which also used to be a subsidiary of Ziff Davis at one point, along with, GameSpot and all of them. They later, I think, got sold off to somebody. I don't remember who. Another thing, I believe News Corp also bought MySpace and PhotoBucket, but nobody cares about those anymore.
Don't talk about the poor decisions my Uncle Rupert made.
And now, of course, some of these subsidiaries they have eventually sold off. They did sell off UGO. They did sell off Direct to Drive to, you said Netflix, Mark?
No, Direct to Drive was sold to GameFly.
GameFly. Why am I thinking Netflix? I don't know why. And of course, now the real purpose of this conversation was yesterday. The IGN purchased Humble Bundle, and as of now, they say for the immediate future, with no specific date in mind, the company will continue to run independently. We have to figure this one out. So, why buy Humble Bundle? I mean, some of the other subsidiaries that they have bought in the past made sense from like a media acquisition standpoint, like buying UGO, buying GameSpy, trying to make a little bit of extra money on the side with the direct-to-download digital games. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I mean, in a broad sense, it feels to me like IGN wants to be something other than a game review site, which is like, mostly what people go there for.
Mm-hmm.
And they have they've been doing that sort of thing for years at this point. They were attached to the GameSpy network. They were attached to Direct to Drive. They were attached to, reviewing many different things over the years. It's all in an attempt to diversify, to become something else, more or less. As far as what they're doing with Humble Bundle in particular, I feel like they've always wanted to, on some level or another, be like a game delivery or a game supply type service. Look at, again, GameSpy, Direct to Drive, etc. So the idea of directly associating with this, charitable game service where people put in money and it gets them cheap games and some degree of charity payoff seems like it's kind of a no-brainer for them. Makes IGN look a little better by being directly associated with this. Gives Humble Bundle as a platform access to larger corporations than they might have had on their own, because I don't know if there were certain ones that were holdouts that might work with IGN now that wouldn't have worked with Humble Bundle on their own. And I mean, so long as they're consistently offering decent bundles, there's always going to be some degree of profit margin associated. So from Humble Bundle's perspective, there's just less loss that they have to worry about.
Okay, so now where do you think IGN's going to go from here with this Humble Bundle? Do you think they're going to eventually absolve Humble Bundle to be a part of like the IGN network? Will Humble Bundles still stand apart? What do you think, Keith?
Well, I think you kind of said it already, is that it's going to kind of be operated as this own separate entity, but eventually, yeah, probably, and it already is underneath of the IGN umbrella, if you will, as far as that one's concerned. I'm going to probably go with Mark and say that it's very, very good idea that they have this digital transportation or this digital like download medium that isn't Steam or anything along those lines. And really that's what they I think they want to have like this corner of the gaming market, so to say, the corporate gaming market, I should say. And now they have a pretty good tax write-off at this point, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Humble Bundle doesn't just offer only video games. They actually offer a lot of other things, like ebooks, for instance. I don't know. Do they even offer like digital movies? I don't remember. I think digital.
Think so.
I think they offer all kinds of different types of digital media.
They offer game bundles. They have software bundles, which development software, learning software, things like that. Books, like technical learning books, things like that, as well as
and mobile games,
like entertainment books and whatnot.
Okay, I think I might have been wrong then. I thought they might have offered like digital movies or something like that. But there you go. So they offer a slew of different types of stuff. With something like software being a software bundles, what other avenues do you think this opens up for IGN and Humble Bundle? Through this new partnership. Emily, what are your thoughts?
I mean, a lot of my thoughts are aligned with what Mark and Keith said, but I think a lot of what we're seeing now is just IGN not wanting to necessarily just sell games in some sort of way, but also to expand. Looking back at IGN and how it started off, I mean, it's always been constantly evolving and expanding and is arguably the number one, gaming website out there for all video games. But if you compare it to other similar companies outside of gaming, like, Amazon, who started off just, selling products online, and then it was selling products for cheaper, and then it was you could also sell your products, and then you got Amazon Prime, then Amazon started buying out other companies. Amazon recently bought Whole Foods. Things like that. This is the company expanding,
evolving, if you will.
Expanding, looking into other opportunities that are similar. like digitally. So, okay, Humble Bundle, there's other digital means on there than just video games. Well, video games are digital. Well, at least a lot of them now are digital. So it's kind of like makes sense for their avenue. Amazon, I mean, who knows? But one of the things that you were talking about was whether or not Humble Bundle would stay a separate separate entity or merge in with IGN. And I think right now it's hard to tell whether or not that's going to stick with Humble Bundle being a separate entity. It depends on its success. Now that they are, now that IGN did take over. And it's too soon to tell. You have to wait to see what happens, what agreements are in play, how IGN plans to fully utilize them in the next couple of months. But if you look at, a situation like Starbucks, who bought out Tivana, for a while, they had the same similar concept. All Tivana stores will remain open, and Starbucks will take in Tivana products for all their teas. But now, Starbucks announced not that long ago that they're closing all the Tivana stores. And if you want Tivana tea, you can now get them in the Starbucks stores, but that's it. There will no, I think as of like next spring, all Tivana stores will be completely closed. So that is
the Starbucks.
Well, yeah, and then now all the tea from Tivana will remain there, but the stores will no longer be open. So I think it's a similar concept. It depends on how it fares. The Tivana stores didn't fare as well as I think, Starbucks was expecting, so instead they chose to close all of them, but keep the Tivana tea. So I think it's one of those things where you won't really know until you see what happens over the course of the next couple of months. But I do think 9 times out of 10, we're going to see IGN start doing a lot of stuff similar to Humble Bundle. And it would not surprise me if in the next year or so, Humble Bundle becomes like a part of IGN somehow. Like it's a link, Humble Bundle, and you click on it like in IGN's website or something. It wouldn't, or they get rid of it altogether and merge it in. I'm not really sure if there's any other really avenue they could go down right now other than either keep it a separate entity or merge it together somehow. And I think
they'll probably keep it a separate entity for about 3 to 5 years at least, and then likely integrate it.
Yeah, like that's why I was saying it's too hard to tell right now exactly what they're going to do and how successful it'll be.
I just hope that they get some more better. Yeah, I hope they get some better games. With this,
well, I mean, it's honestly it's not a matter of necessarily being successful and whatnot. It's going to be a matter of how much expense is involved in integrating all of their systems together. Like, having been on the back end of a systems merger, a corporate merger, you get into a situation where initially you're going to look at it as two separate entities. You're going to say, all right, X company does X, Y company does Y, and they just kind of leave it alone. If Humble Bundle can maintain a degree of profitability that makes it a worthwhile entity to keep on its own, and like it's not overly expensive for IGN to keep it separate, I see no reason why they wouldn't do that. If it's less expensive or more financially viable for them to merge it into the IGN brand, you're probably going to start to see them over the next couple of years like go through a couple of growing pains, like change some stuff on the site, things like that, while they merge the back ends together before they finally just announce one day, oh, well, Humble Bundle is going to be a part of IGN. And it's I feel like eventually they're probably going to try and integrate it. I don't know if they're necessarily going to keep it as is. It's certainly the most successful property that they've ever purchased, but they don't exactly have a great track record of buying stuff
and keeping it.
Right. Like in an ideal best case scenario, assuming that IGN brings in people who know how to manage Humble Bundle and then themselves knows how to properly manage Humble Bundle, it's probable they will probably keep it either as a directly associated entity or they'll just merge it in. Based on their track record, they're probably going to sell it off or shutter it in a couple of years.
Okay,
I would agree with that one, definitely.
Now, you say in a couple of years. Now, as you also mentioned earlier, that there is the possibility for growth in terms of having better connections within the game industry that IGN definitely has deep roots in. Primarily, Humble Bundle does games for Steam and PC games in general. Do you think this will open up the avenues of, let's say, digital download codes for Xbox, for PlayStation, for Switch? Do you think that they might actually make that kind of a move? Do you think they'll expand even farther than that? Like, let's say, Mac? I'll go to Mark with that one.
I mean, I don't see what was stopping them from doing it in the first place, except as a matter of, like, just general market share. I believe that we have seen stuff where it's like they have like Mac games, like codes, or Linux games / codes. Do I see them focusing an entire bundle on it? No. There's not a large enough demographic that's going to do that. And let me be clear, I like Apple as a platform developer. I think Macs are fine, but like Mac does not have the market share. Linux does not have the market share that PC does. You're going to get the best possible Humble Bundle benefits from doing that, from doing it on PC. As it relates to console releases, well, then you get into the wheelhouse of console developer or console owners, console platform owners like Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo charging X amount of dollars for individual keys that are distributed. So the question is, are they going to waive those fees to give away the thousands of keys that will be needed to get a Humble Bundle off the ground? If they can get Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo on board with waiving those fees, sure, we will almost certainly see that happen. If IGN can't convince them to do that, no, I absolutely do not think we'll ever see that. And frankly, they'd be stupid to do it because they would be the ones paying out of pocket for it. It would be a money loser, even from a charity perspective. So if it never happens, that's probably why.
Okay, so now let's say this doesn't work out. Like you say, they can't acquire these thousands of keys because Microsoft or Sony isn't getting, let's say, anything back in return from this. You say 2 to 3 years they might be sold off. I'm thinking maybe a little bit longer than that, or maybe they might just be.
I'm saying 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. I want to say maybe 5 to 10 years because at least they kept companies around like Direct to Drive. I think they kept One Up around for at least a few years. But then again, I think One Up was actually shut down at some point. Now, here's the big question. What exactly is IGN at this point? Who are they as a company? They keep trying to delve their hands deep into all different types of forms of media. It's almost hard to pinpoint what their identity is now. So, Keith, what do you think IGN is at this point?
At this point, they're just trying to be the source for information where it comes to like these pop cultures and or nerdy and or I would guess you would say geek culture, sort of culture, anything to that.
Mike's cutting in and out.
They want to actually be. I'm sorry if hopefully everybody can hear me okay now. Hopefully they can. Well, this is pretty much what they are. They are the place to go to, and that's what they want to be advertised as. Is like, hey, we're going to be the ones that are going to show you this. We're going to tell you whether or not this is going to be good to use. Anything along those lines for it. I think that's what they are and what they're going to be. But the thing is, I think that on the whole, IGN is a little biased. So that's where I kind of have that disconnect with that particular form, but you got to give it to them that they are the source of information where you go to for a lot of different things, and that's what I think they're marketing as the go-to for gaming.
All right.
Or that.
Okay, so final question of the night, and this will go to you, Emily. Does purchasing a Humble Bundle in any way, shape, or form change your outlook or image of IGN as a whole, who we've known has been a controversial figure when it comes to game reviews and the way they market, themselves?
I mean, this is just my opinion, but I don't. It doesn't personally change my views of IGN. For example, sure, IGN has like movie reviews and they have stuff about TV shows and like technology now, and pretty much everything that is like digital. They have like different sections for on their website. I don't really pay attention to that though, because for me, IGN has always been where I go for gaming related things. So me personally, for example, if a new game comes out and I want to know what its rating is, IGN is one of the first places I will go to look and see what they're rating a game. And I, for the most part, will trust and read their reviews. I primarily look at IGN for gaming related stuff. I don't really look at it for other stuff. Occasionally I will read another article like on a movie or some other type of tech that they do, but I don't see it as something that's going to change my outlook on IGN in a negative way. I'm actually curious where they plan on going with it, and seeing how they plan on expanding their company with it. I think when you look at companies like IGN, as our technology and media evolved, so did IGN. And they kind of just have always tried to stick with that, you know what I mean? I'm not really sure if that makes sense. It made sense in my head before I said it, but really, as long as I've been tracking, well, I mean, I don't want to say tracking the
As long as you've been watching IGN.
As long as I've been living, I guess.
Living.
Okay.
Well, no,
All right.
well, no, I was trying to say, all of you know, you all grew up during the shift in technology and the shift in
Are
media.
you trying to say we're old?
You two are old.
First of all, I said all of us. So I'm not like, I'm including myself in this. You know, I was born in the late 80s, so I was alive during the whole shift of technology. There was a period of time
You
where
weren't around for the crash of '83, woman.
no, but I was around.
Wow, way to pull that one out there, Hubs.
I was around in a period of time where there was no internet and there was no cell phones, and if I wanted to play video games with somebody, I had to have a game link and stick a wire, and they had to actually like
Turn to channel 3.
But yeah, in your retrospective, your thoughts on IGN?
That's what I was trying to say, though. So it goes a little bit back to the question that you had directed towards Keith, but if you look at really how IGN has evolved, they've evolved as media and technology has evolved, and they've tried very much to stay on top of that and remain the number one source, as you see all these other websites and different like GameSpot and different like websites trying to pop up and do a similar thing.
But as a whole, they haven't really changed in your eyes, even after the purchase of Humble Bundle?
No. I don't feel that is something like that. To me makes sense with, you know, their track record and what they've been doing. So it doesn't, like, if they were to purchase Barnes and Noble, I'd be like, all right, what are you doing? You know, like that would be like some type of shift where I'd be like, all right, those are paper, those are books. Like that
10 out of 10, like Oblivion, but with paper.
Yeah, like, or if they were to like purchase, say, okay, we're going to invest in, you know, Giant food, like Giant, like the grocery store, I'd be like, So I feel like it doesn't change my opinion.
Okay. So, well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. IGN just does another acquisition, this time trying to, I guess, better their image and something that kind of makes sense for them as a company as a whole. Moving on to our next topic of conversation. Are gamers today nothing but whiny little bitches? Are games too hard for people these days? Or is this just a generation gap here where people are actually experiencing difficult games and they just gotta, complain about them. A recent headline came out. Some people are just constantly whining left and right about the game Cuphead, calling it the 2D Dark Souls. So the question is, are games in this day and age hard? And Keith, please start us off.
Actually, can I interject real
Mark,
quick? Just
go ahead.
One small observation.
Yeah.
Please.
People need to stop comparing shit to fucking Dark Souls.
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
I don't get paid to do this shit, and I don't do that.
No.
You get paid. Stop doing it.
It's like a constant thing. Like, I mean,
It's like to them that's the hardest game there was.
no, like the Crash Bandicoot trilogy came out. Oh my god, it's as hard as Dark Souls. No, it's not. Like, what? Two completely different games. I don't know what the fascination is with comparing new games to Dark Souls.
It's
Or even old games to Dark Souls.
What?
Old games, like Crash Bandicoot Trilogy is just a facelift of an old game. A 20-year-old game at this point.
Yeah, but it has. But like my point is, like, they're two completely different games. It's
Yes.
a similar thing. Like Mark was saying, every single game now gets compared to Dark Souls for whatever reason.
Yep.
It's stupid.
Yes, it is. All right, go ahead, Keith.
Okay. Well, pretty much, yes, I concur with Mark that that does need to stop happening. Just because, this game, while decently hard, is not that hard.
It's tough.
Honestly. It's tough. Definitely tough. If anything, like a hard game, I thought was like Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox. And then if you want to go even further back, I think of a hard game as Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which to this freaking day I've still not beaten.
Mm-hmm.
I've only seen one person beaten it, and they know who they are. So those are like hard games. Games nowadays, I think that they have challenges, but I don't think that they were as hard as that source material. And then you had a great game like Dark Souls, which kind of was the toughest game at that point, come out. So I don't really think games are that tough. I think they're challenging, but I don't think that they're that tough. And some people honestly need to kind of get over it a little bit, because we dealt with a lot worse games. A lot, and everybody knows it.
Okay, so is this really like a generational thing? Like like back in our day, some of the really hard games were like Contra, Battletoads, Ghouls and Ghosts, Ghosts and Goblins, those games. Now this generation, it's Dark Souls, it's Bloodborne, it's Cuphead. Like, you know what? It's just like, it's mind-boggling how people want to sit here and say that these are really hard games. I mean, some people are even going off and saying, "Oh, that the Call of Duty games are super hard and stuff like that." Is this really a generation thing, or are we just really just that detached from society, Mark? Or that detached from gaming?
Neither. I have a friend. His name is Carl.
You have a friend?
I have a friend. I know, it's amazing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
He has cerebral palsy.
Oh.
He can't play a lot of the games that we play. I had to come over to his house, apartment, whatever, and beat the last boss of one of the Uncharted's for him. Not because it was difficult, because he just couldn't do it. Now, I don't think there's a problem with games being challenging, but let's just call it what it is. Games when we were growing up were 45 minutes long and hard as nuts because they were $50 and they wanted you to feel like you got more than 45 minutes of play out of $50.
Absolutely.
So they would make these games difficult so you would die and you would have to try again and again and again and again. That was a financial choice. And if you look at games that come out of the Japanese arcade scene today, that's still a financial choice. They want people to dump quarters in. They want to get as much money as possible. In this day and age, difficulty is not necessarily a financial choice. It can be, but usually you're going to use it either as an artistic expression or a gatekeeping mechanic. So a lot of game developers will develop games for the largest possible audience. So to me, it's, I don't give a fuck about difficulty. If you have a really good artistic reason for using it, go nuts. If you can justify it in the artistry of your game, absolutely. If you're just doing it as a gatekeeping mechanic, fuck off. I have no time for that shit. Listen, I'm 38, okay? I have beaten all of the Souls games except for Demon Souls because I just didn't invest enough time in it at the time. I have beaten The Amazing Spider-Man versus the Kingpin on the goddamn nightmare difficulty, and I have beaten multiple shooters from the 80s. I have nothing to prove to anybody, and I don't think adjustable difficulties would impact my achievements here. If somebody wants to put an easier difficulty into Cuphead, I'd be more likely to pay money for it, because I have no tolerance for that shit at this point. And to be honest, it's, if you really wanted to make it so it's a thing where, like, oh, well, gamers today or whatever, okay, put fucking the trophies at, like, a minimum difficulty level that you can get them at then. Like, just make it so that, you know, the easiest difficulty doesn't get you all or most of the trophies, and encourage players to get better. Because if you're telling me, well, our game is going to be difficult and you're going to play it the way that we want it to be done, I'm like, okay, I'll save myself $20.
So, what about this generation of gamers? Are they just, I mean, outside of, you know, people like your friend there, Mark, are they just spoiled with how people are just, you know, making their games
making games that actually respect your time?
Yes.
No, I don't think they're spoiled at all. I think developers are actually realizing, hey, maybe we shouldn't make games that are 2 hours long and like throw your experience down the toilet, you know? It's time is valuable to a number of people. Not necessarily everyone. Some people, you know, like younger kids have a lot more time on their hands, but I think a lot of developers are starting to realize that older players and less skilled players are a demographic, are a market. When we were kids, you know, 10 million people owned a console. And now we're at a point where 60, 70, 80, 100 million consoles will be sold for any one particular platform. You're going to want to appeal to the largest number of bodies. Are they not teaching people the kind of tools we used to have growing up? Probably not. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. If a gamer legitimately wants to get good and wants to play at the highest difficulties in the games that they love, they're going to do it. There's always going to be gamers that are skilled. But for a lot of people, they don't want or need that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I legitimately don't.
Okay. Emily, how do you feel about hard games now and hard games back then?
I think the definition of, you know, hard games has really changed with
time.
Yeah, no, like with the generation. For example, what I view as hard are the games I played when I was younger, when I was a kid. And so if I go back, for example, after I played Pokemon XY, I was really excited because, you know, that they decided to put the first generation on the 3DS, so red, blue, yellow. And of course, like, I had to get it. And, you know, my friend's like, why are you getting it when you already have the game on the Game Boy? I'm like, because it's on the 3DS. Like, why would I not get it? So when I did it and I started playing again, I realized how much harder the first generation Pokemon was. And I used to be a beast at it when I was younger. But now I got accustomed to the modern way it was done. So even though there were a lot of similarities with it, like, there was a lot of differences as well. And I think it's a similar concept. You look at Super Mario. Super Mario was harder back then. I feel like every time I say back then, I feel like I'm like a million years old, but it was harder back in the 90s than it really is now. And but that is my opinion, because my experience was those are the first games that I played. Now you have a generation where these are the first games that they're playing. So the level of what's hard is different. A lot of games now, even with the Evil Within 2, when I went to play last night, you have an option. You have the easier mode, you have hard mode, you have medium mode, you have extra survival mode, which is really hard, and they give you all these different options of how difficult you want a game to be. And a lot of the time that you see these complaints arise are with games like Cuphead, Crash Bandicoot, reboots, any type of game that's kind of pays homage and is similar to how a game was when, in the 90s. I'm going to stop saying when we were younger because it makes me feel like old. But any game like that is... this generation is going to view that as difficult and completely impossible. While we look at it as that's really not that difficult. I mean, look at, look at this game from the 90s. That was difficult. But their level of difficulty is different. So while we're used to that level of difficulty and we don't view it as being as difficult as said game from the 90s, they didn't really grow up playing those games from the 90s. They grew up playing the games now. So I feel like their understanding of what difficulty is different than our understanding, a previous generation's understanding of difficulty in a video game. So I don't think that they're being whiny. And I say that as somebody that gets really irritated every time I see a headline, oh my God, it's as hard as this. But at the exact same time, I kind of understand where they're coming from. You take somebody that grew up, was born in the 2000s, and they're not going to understand a lot of the games that we grew up on because at that point, media was changing drastically at the time, and they grew up playing a different difficulty. I hope that I'm making sense here. That being said,
no, you're making perfect sense, actually, Emily. Like you said, is that the difficulties that something like me, I absolutely have zero skill. So if you actually were to watch me play Cuphead, you would be like, "Why does he say this game is easy? Because clearly he sucks at it." And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's tough. But something that we thought was hard back in that early gaming age for it doesn't necessarily translate out to it being easier and or harder versus the standard nowadays for it. I can completely agree with that. And also, like Mark also pointed out, is that, and he's right, because the more I thought on it, it's like sometimes I just don't want to deal with that shit, and then
exactly.
I just get like bored with, not so much bored with it, but I just push it off.
No, I mean, I won't lie. There's definitely games that I've gotten that I've chosen the easiest mode there was when you have an option. Because I'm like, I don't feel like dealing with that. I want to actually enjoy this, So, I mean, while I know people that absolutely love playing games on like the hardest mode possible, they want that challenge. So I actually like that video games nowadays give you an option. A lot of them, not all of them. But I like the fact that you can kind of have an option on how difficult you want the game to be, because some people don't want that severe of a challenge. But like I said, the reason you're seeing, people comparing like Cuphead and Crash Bandicoot and some of these other games to Dark Souls is they're comparing it to what they view as in their generation as the most difficult, the hardest type of game. While we look at Dark Souls and then we look at the games from the 90s and we're like, all right, it's really not that hard compared to this. So it's I feel a lot of it is just a difference in generations and a difference in the style in development of video games compared to other generations.
Okay, so now, of course, we do have a slew of games that have been coming out the last several years. These are games that are basically catered to like those who love hard difficulties. I believe most of these games are usually referred to as roguelikes, games that are pretty much just one-shot deals. You go, you die, you start all the way back to the very beginning.
Oh God.
Yep. So these are games.
I'm just remembering all the games like that. For example, I mean, I don't know who remembers the game Chips Challenge.
No.
I remember Chips Challenge.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was.
Yeah.
Everybody had
a.
a copy of Chips Challenge. It came on your PC.
Well, see, that's the thing. For me, it didn't. I recently got it again. I got so excited it was on Steam, so it's like on my laptop. But when I was a kid, I played it in. We had after school in middle school. There were these things called intramurals at my school, and it was pretty much like after school activities. And out of all of them, my mom's like, "Which one do you want?" I'm like, "Oh, I want to do computer games." And she's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yup." So of course, all we played was Chips Challenge, G's Ball, that whole entertainment pack. Pipes and Dreams, I think, was another one. There was the one with like the bear. That one was so difficult when you were skiing, and then
It
the
was
bear
just ski free, yeah.
I was about to say
the-
Ski Free
Oh
with the
my
freaking
God,
dinosaur.
I don't think I ever beat that game, no matter how many times I tried. 'Cause once the bear came out, I was pretty much done for. But for that's the type of game where you die, you start at the very beginning again, and it would get so frustrating because you'd be on these complex levels, and you would be this close. You were right at the very end. You were almost done, then you died.
Mm-hmm. But
You
yes,
just
now
all
moving
again.
on to my question though, with
There's
the
8.10.
new with the roguelike style of games, obviously they cater to a niche group of gamers who really like to take on these ultra hard challenges. I mean, and granted, you also have the games that have the higher difficulty levels that Marks mentioned earlier, saying like, oh, hey, these are games that pretty much like will have everything set up in a way so that people get better at the games, and then, hey, you want to challenge yourself further, go ahead and do a higher difficulty level. And with the games back in the day when we were younger, all one difficulty, all pretty much literally designed for just maximum replay value. Yeah, shoot 'em ups, of course. You know, the hardest form of shoot 'em up we got are also called bullet hell games, which are the ultimate quarter munchers. You know what? I'm actually all these people are starting to interact with us. Holy crap! With these style of games that are coming out now, with games like Cuphead or roguelike games, do you think this type of style of games that will keep coming out, and do you think the number of this niche group will grow further to where there will be a really big demand for stuff like this? Because let's be honest, I mean, we got Dark Souls, we got Cuphead, we got, roguelike games like, what was that? I'm trying to remember the name of that spaceship game that I reviewed a couple years ago when I was with Die Hard Game Fan. I was not really a big fan of it.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the name of the game, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a roguelike game. Then you have like other.
They have all kinds of roguelike games. Darkest
kinds.
Dungeon, Darkest Dungeon, FTL. There's another one I have in my library that's Endless Dungeon, I believe, Endless Odyssey, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember the Dungeon of the Endless.
Yes.
It's games where, and then if you want to go for like PC type games, they have the dungeon crawler-esque games like your Etrian Odysseys, and then they have the straight roguelikes like the Mystery Dungeon games, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Shyren the Wanderer, so on and so forth. You start at level 1 or at like some low tier. You go into an environment and you have to see if you can make it to the end. If you die, you start over again.
Okay. So now the main question is, with a lot of these, there are not a whole lot of them, but there seems to be a good chunk of these games coming out. Do you think there's a chance for the difficulty-seeking gamer to go from a niche to, let's say, almost a mainstream thing, Mark?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, do you think
do I think that difficulty heavy games can become majorly popular? Do you mean?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it already happened. Dark Souls.
Well, yeah, Dark Souls, but I was just like saying, like, I mean, those.
Do we
majorly
think that's
popular
going to become the majority?
Like, or like not the majority, but like run on equal grounds with like regular casual games or games with like a decent challenge to them?
No.
There's
no. This is the thing. If the question in general is, can difficult games be popular? Absolutely. If the question is, can difficult games equivalently be popular to games that have multiple options? No, absolutely not. because there's a far larger demographic of people who are going to buy games that cater to their particular skill set than there are people who are going to buy games where the challenge is one of the major artistic or mechanical factors. Dark Souls is very popular, or Souls-esque games, let's me say, are very popular. Monster Hunter is reasonably popular. You'll see those do, 2, 3, 4 million sales. They're not going to beat a Grand Theft Auto, which generally skews to be a little bit on the easy side. They're not going to beat a game that has multiple different difficulty options, because the majority of people just want to play how they want to play. If they want that challenge, they're going to get that challenge. If they don't want that challenge, they're going to extend their middle finger and they're going to say, no, I'm not going to pay X amount of dollars for your super hard fucking game. Like, I get the want to stick to your particular artistic vision. Don't get me wrong. You should do what you want to do, but like for me, your game needs to explain to me artistically, as an example, why it's difficult. If your game can give me an artistic reason why it's challenging, like Dark Souls, I'll argue for inclusivity, but I'll still play it. Mm-hmm. If it's like a Cuphead or a Super Meat Boy, your game's just challenging because you want it to be challenging. And that's fine. That's not for me. There's not an artistic reason for it. It's just, I want this game to be tough. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot more people who look at it as, I want to be able to play the game the way I want to, than don't. Like, where they're like, they'll accept the difficulty if there's a reason for it, but if it's just hard for the sake of being hard, they're going to shrug and go, okay, I'm not going to buy any more games from this person.
Okay. So, we're going to be coming down to the end of the show here, so I got one last question, and I'll go around for everybody. This is a question definitely for everybody, and even the people in the audience that are participating in conversations right now. I want you all to name 2 games, difficult games that you actually enjoy. One from the past, and one from the modern era. We'll start with you, Emily. Name an old game and a modern game that are hard that you really enjoy.
An old game. Let me start with that. Well, there's an old game that I've yet to be able to beat, and I really haven't been able to play it until it came out on the 3DS, but it's the Lost Levels.
Mario Lost
Super
Levels?
Mario?
Yeah. I have not been able to beat that. That gets really difficult. I feel like it's hard for me to beat. I feel like it's hard for anybody to beat. The Lost Levels are very difficult. At least for me, they are. I don't know if anybody else has been able to beat it, but I, for one, plus I play a million games. So I feel that one's hard, but I enjoy the challenge with that. I think it's just because I grew up playing like Super Mario and Wario, all those games. So I kind of enjoy that particular challenge, old game wise, and then modern. I don't know if there's. I'm trying to think.
You can cheat on this one if you like. A re-release.
Actually, I'm not going to say a re-release. What I am going to say, though, is a particular genre. There are some shooting games or some games that require me to shoot a gun that I really enjoy. And visually they're beautiful and I want them. But shooting games are games that I personally have a problem with. I'm not very good at them. I try, but normally I end up running around and the camera goes flying and I'm trying to aim and I don't know. Like, I'm just not. But The Evil Within is actually a nice challenge for me. I really enjoy survival horror. And because of that, it's one of those ones where sometimes I have difficulty with it because I have to be able to shoot a gun. A lot of survival horror games give you a gun. You have to be able to aim and shoot. So the more survival horror games I play, the more I get better at shooting games. So I'm going to have to say that I feel that certain like games like Resident Evil and Evil Within, they're a little bit more of a challenge for me than they would be for other people because of those certain elements. But I 100% love them to a T. I'm a big horror fan, so it kind of goes hand in hand for me, and I kind of have to learn how to shoot a gun in a video game and not fly all over the place.
All right,
So
how
yeah.
about you, Keith?
Well, the thing is, I don't know how I can really answer that question. Just because there's
I
a
know.
really, like, I don't know what you would consider, like, older titles versus newer titles, so to
I would say modern
for it.
is within the last 10 years.
Okay, so if you were going to say, like, an older game, I mean, because what I was going to probably say, one of the more difficult games that, for whatever reason, I get a sick satisfaction in playing, just more so probably from the humiliation of it, is Ninja Gaiden Black on the Xbox. Like, I just like hooking up my Xbox and just playing that game every so often. The game is just ridiculously hard. As far as, like, newer titles that I would say that are difficult, but I enjoy them, I would probably say something to the mind of, like, Flappy Bird and something to that extent. Because, again, I can't really think of, like, hard games that really, like... Because I like Dark Souls. I really like Dark Souls. Let me just preface with that. But, like, I can't play Dark Souls, so I suck at it. It gets really, really frustrating. So I can't really say that it was one of those games I enjoyed playing so much as I enjoyed it for everything that it offered and the degree of difficulty for it. But something that I could just, like, sit there mindlessly and it's fucking hard, but you just keep on going at it would be like something like Flappy Bird.
Flappy Birds is true. That is true. I spent way too many too much time trying to beat that game.
How about you, Mark? A modern and a classic game that...
classic game, Ghouls and Ghosts.
There you go. That
I
sounds like a fun
actually
one.
beat the Genesis version of that, and
God bless you.
oh yeah, no, it was no joke. It was no joke, but
Exactly. That's what I said. God bless you.
it's a good game. I mean, it definitely earns its reputation. Like in this day and age, I think there's more games that came out that were more difficult than it, but I liked what it did. Modern games, I could probably like go with the easy choice and pick like the Souls games or the Monster Hunter games because I already named them. But I'm gonna go with FTL, Faster Than Light.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that it is structured the way that it is. That it has some really neat ideas for how it presents the roguelike concept. I do think that it's a bit too RNG heavy for its own good, but I like the style and the concept behind it enough that I'm willing to, bash my head against that wall, even if I feel like the game is a bit much. Also, this War of Mine, which has RNG and roguelike elements attached to a really interesting story that justifies why the game is as difficult as it is. I think that game does a really good job of trying to convince the player to stick with the difficulty that it gives you. And if you just outright suck at it, you can always download some type of a mod from Steam and, turn the difficulty down if you really want to.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got a favorite classic game and a favorite modern game, go ahead and shout it out right there in the chat. We see Brutal Carnifax says he loves Streets of Rage. So,
in your defense, Streets of Rage was a challenging game.
It was
for it,
but it was also one of the more manageable of the street beat 'em up games that came out back in the 90s.
And I think they give you a decent amount of continues to get through with that. Like,
yeah,
I think like it wasn't the worst one I can recall playing. Like Splatterhouse 3 was definitely worse. Like I went back and tried to play that not too long ago. And Jesus Christ. It was bullshit.
Well, you know what? Real quick, I guess I will mention a couple of classic games. Or one classic game. I don't know how many people here have experienced it, but the Shadow of the Beast, first Shadow of the Beast game is incredibly difficult. Believe it or not, it is
fair,
a 30-minute game.
bad.
It's not.
That game is bad.
No, I disagree.
You are literally one of the very few people I have met. Like it's okay to like bad things, but you are literally one of the very few people that I have met that thinks that game is good. God bless you. God bless you for liking it. Every game is somebody's favorite, and I legitimately believe that. But yeah, that game is really not for everyone.
Not for everyone. It's not a bad game, but it's not for everyone. I can agree to that. It's an incredibly tough game. It can actually be beaten in 30 minutes, but the amount of memorization in terms of enemy placement, enemy spawning in that game is like key to being able to survive more than like maybe 15 minutes. Now, as for a modern game for me, I guess I would have to probably say Bloodborne, because that's the only one of the Dark Soul-esque style games I have ever played, and I actually enjoy it quite a bit. It's a pretty tough game, but it's definitely fun to just figure out how to read enemy monster movements and just try and figure out strategies. I think I really enjoy that personally quite a bit. Even if I fail a few times, it's fun to just get back in there and kill them.
Yeah, I'm with Keith on the level of Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I've tried. My boyfriend loves Dark Souls. He loves Bloodborne. He loves that series. And every single time he gets the game, I try. But I get so frustrated. I have no patience. And I get so angry and frustrated. So, like, I want to say that, like, in this particular generation of video games, that's the one that I find difficult. And I find games back in the 90s that are considered difficult in that time easy now. I makes no sense to me, but
All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Fun little topic about hard games and a nice little discussion about IGN. So I want to thank everybody right here for tuning in tonight with us at GVN Live. Thank you, Emily, Keith, and Mark for joining me tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Anybody want to do any shout-outs about anything they're going to be doing real quick coming up in the future? Emily?
I'll do a shout-out. As some people who have tuned into the show before, back when I was actually didn't take a month off pretty much. But I did recently start up my 2 shows program stuff again. I do an East Coast player spotlight where I pick a fighting game player from the East Coast once a month and I showcase them. First half hour is an interview. The other half hour we play said game of their choice or their main game. I also started another program called the Women of the FGC Spotlight, which is showcasing females from the fighting game community. That being said, Women of the FGC Spotlight is this Wednesday at 9 p.m. The person that I'll be showcasing is Jenny Liu. She's very up and coming in the past year, but she's been making moves and doing a lot of great things for the FGC. So you can tune in at 9 p.m. if you would like on twitch.tv/Jamelian.
Okay. Anybody else? Mark or Keith? Anything you'd like to mention?
Not right now. I got a bunch of stuff that I'm dealing with in regular life, so I'm not in a position where I can really pimp anything because there's just a lot of delays and everything, and I don't know when I'm going to be back on track right now.
Okay. What about your live stream, or is that part of the deal?
I'm trying to do the live streams every Saturday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over at twitch.tv/MarkBWriting, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to always be on top of it just because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on. So.
Okay, and how about you, Keith? Is your stream up and running?
No. Like Mark said, unfortunately, this whole thing called life just sucks. I was about to say life doesn't suck. Life is awesome. But no, it's just that you're trying to figure shit out, and I just don't have time to do it at the moment, especially with the holidays, and I work in retail. So there we go.
Okay, so coming up for me, this Wednesday is another game jam. Continuing the month of October is open game month, so I don't know what I'm going to be playing. I might hit up you, Keith, to see if we want to continue doing our Secret of Mana thing, if you're interested.
Absolutely, I'm always down.
Absolutely, our split screen Final Fantasy Adventures Sword of Mana gameplay playthrough. That might be a possibility. So this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. On Thursday is another wonderful episode of PSO Blue Burst of Three Vets and a Noob, and we are going to now start tackling the Halloween event that is going on the Shitak server, and they got a lot of things going on, like zombie rapies and undead creatures and stuff like that. Like, they actually went out of the way to like mess with the game. So like, enemies are giving you poison statuses. There's like lanterns all over the place that'll drop randomly cool items for you to check out. Like, the people who run this private server are definitely going above the Call of Duty just to make it worthwhile to just, still play the 17-year-old game. So definitely check it out this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And next Monday is another Free Step Dodge DOA 5 last round bi-weekly tournament. That'll be going on at 8:35. Signups are still going on. You can check it out at Challenge. I will have the links posted over in freestepdodge.com or at the Dead or Alive competitive Facebook group. So definitely keep an eye out for those. Anyway, on behalf of everybody here on GVN Live, I want to thank you guys for tuning in and have yourself a wonderful night.
Adios.
Bye, guys.